What's up, survivors? Project Zomboid's newest unstable update just dropped, and this is honestly one of the most packed patches we've seen in a while. This update doesn't just fix bugs, it completely improves the overall experience of the game. Gunplay feels smoother, multiplayer is more stable, vehicles behave better, exploiters got crushed, audio immersion is stronger, and there's a massive amount of quality of life improvements that long-term players are definitely going to notice. There's also a ton of behind the scenes work here, the kind of updates that don't always look flashy on paper, but dramatically improves how the game actually feels after dozens of hours of survival. So today, we're going through the biggest changes in the unstable build, what they actually mean, and how they'll affect your gameplay moving forward. It's your boy Prince, and let's get right into it. First and foremost, if you would like to access the latest update, right-click Project Zomboid in your Steam library, go to Properties, then open the Game Version in Betas tab, and select Unstable. Just remember, this is still a testing branch. That means bugs, crashes, unfinished systems, and balancing issues are still expected. You're basically helping test the future version of the game before it officially launches. So be sure to back up your main save. New features. One of the first major additions to this patch is brand new reload animations for lever action rifles and shotguns. And honestly, this matters more than people think. Project Zomboid's combat has always leaned heavily into realism and tension, and animations are a huge part of that immersion. Before this, some reload sequences could feel stiff or repetitive. Now, lever actions and shotguns have smoother handling animations that better match the pacing and physicality of the weapons themselves. And for players who use firearms often, especially in Build 42, this makes gunplay feel far more cinematic and satisfying. The devs are clearly continuing to polish firearm handling overall, which probably means even more animations improvements are coming later. Sit on the ground keybind. There's also a brand new accessibility setting that automatically pauses the game while reading the map. And honestly, this is probably one of the best quality of life features in the entire patch. Because if you've ever played solo Project Zomboid, you already know how stressful checking the map can be. You're just trying to navigate, figure out where you are, plan a route, and meanwhile the game is still running in real time. Now, players can enable automatic pausing whenever they open the map, which makes navigation less punishing for newer players, and much more accessible overall. However, there is currently a known issue involving controllers. Apparently, enabling this feature can freeze the map screen when using a controller input. So, for now, controller users are being advised to disable this setting until the next update. The game also includes a dedicated keybind for sitting on the ground. Now, at first glance, this sounds small, but for Project Zomboid players, especially role players and immersion-focused players, this is actually super useful. Before this, you'd usually have to right-click or manually interact through menus. Now, you can instantly sit down with a single press of a key. And because sitting affects endurance recovery and roleplay interactions, this small feature actually improves moment-to-moment gameplay. I'm definitely going to be binding that probably to my mouse. They also updated propane tanks models to better reflect real US propane tanks. They've also added new garbage bins to Spiffo and Pizza World locations. These aren't major gameplay changes, but environmental details is one of the things that make Project Zomboid feel believable. The world just kind of feels more lived in. So every small prop update helps reinforce the realism of Kentucky after the apocalypse. Balance changes and occupational rebalances. Two occupations received balance adjustments in this patch. First, the ranger occupation no longer receives +1 tracking. Instead, they now receive +1 carving. This appears to push the occupation more towards wilderness crafting and survival utility, rather than tracking animals. Then, there's the rancher occupation, which honestly received a pretty strong buff. Rancher now gains +1 fitness instead of +1 agriculture. And this is actually a pretty huge deal. Agriculture is relatively easy to find over time through normal farming gameplay, but fitness is notoriously difficult and grind heavy to improve naturally. So starting with bonus fitness gives ranchers significantly better endurance, stamina, efficiency, combat survivability, and long-term mobility. So for hardcore survival runs, this might actually make ranchers a much more attractive starting profession. Improvised gas mask rework. The improvised gas mask also got heavily rebalanced, and this update makes improvised respiratory protection much more practical for early game survival. Players can now use clean rags as actual filters for the mask, meaning even low-tier scavenged materials now have more survival value. Now, the mask isn't as powerful as the regular ones that you find in the game, but it's now considerably more effective than simply wearing a bandana over your face, which creates a much better progression system for respiratory protection. There's also a smart recycling mechanic now. If a rag filter is less than or equal to 30% used, it gets returned as a dirty rag instead of being completely destroyed. That means players waste fewer resources, and scavenging for cloths or rags becomes way more rewarding. Containers and encumbrance changes. There's also a bunch of rebalancing changes to fluid containers and heavy objects. First, metal drums and several barrel type objects have their encumbrance value adjusted, which should make transporting industrial containers feel more balanced and realistic. But the biggest change here involves liquid capacities. Jerry cans were doubled from 10 liters to 20 liters, which is massive for vehicle-focused players, so you know what that means. Way more gas. Fuel storage becomes dramatically easier now, especially for long-distance travels or generator management. Canteens also received huge buffs. Standard canteens jumped from 500 milliliters to 900 milliliters. Cowboy canteens increased from 1 liter to 1.8 liter, and hydration backpacks were massively improved too, with some versions now carrying up to 3 liters. This completely changes long-distance exploration efficiency. Water runs become less frequent and survival trips become more sustainable. So if you usually choose high thirst, this is a plus for you. However, beer bottles been reduced from 1 liter to 300 milliliters, which honestly makes more sense. Modding improvements. Modders also got a lot of attention in this update. We kind of seen this coming because the last update, spring is here. They basically said modding and multiplayer polishes. So yeah, we kind of seen this coming. But honestly, this is one of the most important long-term parts of the patch. Project Zomboid's modding scene is massive. If you're not aware, modders are the backbone of Project Zomboid, and any improvements to them is improvement to us. And improving compatibility keeps the game alive for years. So, the update fixes multiplayer support for non-base module recipes, which previously caused issues with multiplayer servers, or whatever that means. Several crafting systems also got expanded with new methods of scripting functions. Trait textures can now be customized directly through scripts. New zombie speed methods were added, and foraging icons for modded items finally work correctly. That means modded items can now properly appear during foraging gameplay, which is huge for survivability. Multiplayer changes, majority security fixes. One of the biggest multiplayer changes in this patch is the fix for the Racknet denial of service vulnerability. And this is extremely important, because vulnerabilities like this can allow malicious users to intentionally crash or disrupt servers. Yeah, I'm not sure if you remember, but back in April, there was an update called Patching a Zero-Day Exploit, which apparently the Indie Stone received reports from multiple users regarding a mod that was allegedly creating malicious code when run. Here are the mods: Risk of Rain, whatever that is, Persona 5, Jujutsu Kaisen, Silent Hill, Cowboy Bebop, Metal Gear Rising, classic Roblox music. I mean, bruh. Deltarune and Minecraft Alpha. So apparently the exploit only affected build 42 branches. Build 41 was not vulnerable at the time. So the developers specifically thanked the community member named Kat for helping identify the issue, which shows how important community testing is during unstable builds. And this is also why when I'm downloading mods, I make sure it's most subscribed, top rated, like really good mods. So be careful out there, guys. AFK and medical system fixes. Players can now refuse medical checks, and AFK players won't die anymore if And AFK players won't die anymore if someone removes their bandages. Dude, that is messed up, dude. Dude, imagine you go AFK and you come back and you're like 1 HP, bro. Come on. This sounds oddly specific, but on multiplayer servers, people absolutely abuse the mechanic like this. So, these fixes help prevent griefing and unfair deaths. Distant vehicle sounds return. Another huge immersion fix is the return of distant vehicle audio in multiplayers. Players can once again hear vehicles approaching from further away. And this probably means a lot to people who play multiplayer. Hearing an engine in the distance creates tension and gives survivors time to react, hide, or prepare for combat. Now, you're better equipped to identify possible hostile players or friendly players. Vehicle damage and PvP overhaul. The patch also completely reworked how vehicles interact with players in non-PvP servers. Non-PvP players no longer take vehicle damage, no longer get staggered, no longer gets knocked down, and no longer damage vehicles themselves. Meanwhile, PvP-enabled players can still take impact damage depending on server settings. This creates way more cleaner separation between PvE and PvP gameplay, and honestly, it removes a ton of griefing potential. Duplicating exploits destroyed. This update also wipes out a massive amount of duplication exploits and inventory abuse. The devs fixed backpack duplication, forging duplication, unauthorized item spawning, fishing rod duplication, trailer inventory syncing issues, loot corruption bugs, and several multiplayer desync exploits. And this is incredibly important for multiplayer longevity. Duping completely destroys progression systems, destroying trading economies, and just ruins server balance. And honestly, I kind of feel like it just takes the fun out of the game. Vehicle fixes. Vehicle handling also got a ton of improvements. Vehicles now clip through each other less often. Trailers move more smoothly for remote players. Collision damage was reduced, and vehicle syncing overall appears much more stable. Players also can't ghost through vehicles anymore, which fixes some extremely immersion-breaking situations. Zombie and combat fixes. There are also several important zombie combat fixes. Some sprinters that previously made zero sounds were fixed, which is honestly pretty terrifying, because silent sprinters were basically instant death machines. Point-blank calculations for firearms were also fixed, making close-range shooting feel more consistent and reliable. And zombies that can open doors can now properly open doors again, which is also absolutely terrifying, dude. Oh my god, Jesus Christ. Immersion fixes. A lot of smaller fixes in this patch actually improve immersion tremendously. Zombies on fire now produce light correctly. Animals can no longer be seen through walls, campfires behave properly, and frozen food now acts correctly when opened. The game also fixed multiple issues involving characters not becoming dirty or bloody correctly in multiplayer. And visual grime matters a lot in Project Zomboid. It reinforces the exhaustion, the decay, and the brutality of long-term survival. Sound design's improvements. Audio got a surprisingly massive upgrade too. New sounds were added for garbage bins, wooden doors, and crates. And zombie thumping sounds now travel much further. The hearing distance increased from 20 to 70, which means hearing zombies pound against barricades can maybe make the difference between life or death. There are also fixes for bullet impact sounds, fence interaction sounds, smoke bomb audio bugs, death sounds, and ambient audio issues. Overall, the soundscape should feel far more immersive now. Performance and technical changes. Performance-wise, wind sprite effects are now disabled by default, which should help lower-end systems maintain smoother performance. The Lua debugger also got upgraded from 30 FPS to 60 FPS, which helps modders significantly during testing. And the visited map saves received optimization improvements, which should reduce save-related performance problems. Final thoughts. Overall, this unstable update feels less like a simple patch and more like a foundational cleanup and polish update for Build 42. The devs are clearly focusing heavily on multiplayer stability, immersion, anti-exploit systems, audio improvements, survival balancing, and overall gameplay smoothness. A lot of these changes won't immediately stand out in screenshots, but once you actually play the game, the difference becomes pretty obvious. The world feels more stable, more immersive, more responsive, and honestly, more brutal in all the right ways. But now, I want to hear your thoughts. What's the biggest change in this patch for you? And what still needs work before Build 42 fully release? We know for a fact that the Indie Stone are keen to listening to the community suggestions, so be sure to jot them down, as you never know if someone is watching. Let me know down in the comments and subscribe for more kick-ass content. Peace!